Some villains are boring and others are terrifying. Take Judge Frollo, who'd burn Paris because a girl said nah, or Scar turning sunny Pride lands into a dark, barren wasteland. These villains made you fear them not because they said so, but because they showed so. Then it came to this. King Magnifico, who reads a book and decides to become evil. So what happened, Disney? Your villains used to be perfection, and now? Where did it all go wrong? So why do some villains make you fear them and others don't? To find out why, we need to first know what to look for in a scary villain. Here's how we broke it down to 4 main areas. Number 1. Compelling backstory. The villain can't be evil for evil's sake. He or she needs to have a deeply rooted motivation for becoming evil. That's beautifully illustrated with Scar in The Lion King, but it's annoying in Wish's King Magnifico. Everyone can easily understand why Scar is evil. He's young, he's more intelligent than his brother, and yet his older brother inherits the throne. I'd be mad too. But King Magnifico, he's the ruler of a magical kingdom. He grants wishes. Plus, he acquired knowledge over decades, and now his kingdom is filled with happy people. So why would he become evil? Well, Asha asked him to grant everyone's wishes, and he simply lost it. Why? Who knows? Not Disney. Imagine if King Triton became evil because Ariel wanted to have legs, but that's why you have Ursula. Just like King Magnifico, Ursula grants wishes too, but instead of actually giving people what they want, she rigs deals and turns people into whatever those little seaweed creatures are called. And why does she do this? Because King Triton banished her. She's also power hungry and wants to get back at him, so she targets his daughter. She lies and cheats while building a scheme to reach her ultimate goal, the throne of Atlantica. And on top of all that, she's a magician. Now compare Ursula's evilness to King Magnifico. The difference is night and day. The biggest being that Ursula was evil from the start, while King Magnifico became evil later, which brings us to the second important factor of instigating fear. Number 2, villain presence. Have you noticed that animated Disney movies after 2020 have no villains? Like, who's the villain of Encanto? Sure, they say it's Bruno, and there's even a song for him, but we soon find out that he's not a bad guy. He just hides in the walls of the house. Zootopia is the same. Dawn Bellwether reveals her evil plan in one scene, and she's absent for most of the movie. Prince Hans turns evil in the last 15 minutes of Frozen. Meanwhile, Raya fights a group of mindless monsters called the Droon, who turn everything they touch into stone. And Elemental has no villains, just internal and societal conflicts. But have you ever wondered why that is? Well, it has something to do with competition and merchandising. During Disney's golden era, animated films had classic and powerful villains. The Little Mermaid had Ursula, The Hunchback of Notre Dame had Judge Claude Frollo, The Princess and the Frog has Dr. Facilier, and The Lion King had Scar, who, for all intents and purposes, is the ideal all animated movie villain should strive to reach. However, as much as the audience loved these villains on the big screen, Disney couldn't turn a profit from them. At the same time, Pixar, their biggest competitor, was changing the animated movie landscape. They were featuring less pronounced villains. Movies like Ratatouille and Monsters Inc. are great examples. While Disney movies were struggling in the 2000s, Pixar was thriving, and Disney couldn't help but notice. They realized that Pixar's movies didn't rely heavily on villains to tell their story. And after several flops, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, The Emperor's New Groove, and Treasure Planet, to name a few, Disney decided to try a new approach. And on November 28, 2013, they released Frozen, and it seemed like following Pixar's blueprint worked. Hans, the main villain, is barely present in the movie. Frozen became a cult classic. The movie grossed $1.29 billion at the box office, and their merchandising went through the roof. Frozen struck that weird balance. On one hand, Anna and Elsa captured girls' hearts, while Olaf in the movie's theme became a Christmas time mega seller. To this day, the franchise and merchandising rights have brought an estimated $10.5 billion. All of this green led Disney to believe that they had cracked the code to animated movies. And instead of looking to their past, which put Walt Disney Studios on the map, They turn to the future, the one where profit is king. After all, Ursula is cool and Scar seems intimidating, but they don't sell merchandise. Olaf, on the other hand, has mugs, figurines, plates, clothes, shoes, and everything in between. So, over the next decade, they started slowly erasing their villains from the movie screen. Compare Jeremy Irons' Scar, who's cunning and sarcastic, to Scar from the live-action remake, and you'll see but a shell of the original Scar. Jafar in Aladdin, the animated movie, is a theatrical, power-hungry sorcerer who steals the scene. In Aladdin, the live-action remake, Jafar is barely noticeable. For 15 years, Disney has tried to move away from their scary villains, and for 15 years, they failed. This insistence on removing villains has led other franchises like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse have become successful. They feature complex, smart, cunning, and entertaining villains that the audience is clearly hungry for, and incidentally, that's where the third factor for how not to make an audience fear you becomes important. Number 3. Character death. No character should ever be one-dimensional, especially the villains. They should be complex with a lot of conflicting motives, which makes them feel like they're real, and that makes them horrifying. Jack Horner from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is an irredeemable monster, and he's proud of it. He's a psychopathic, sociopathic villain who wants all the magic in the world for himself, and he's not ashamed to admit it. And this honesty, this brutal acceptance of who Jack Horner is deep down is what people love. While Disney was busy removing their villains from their movies, DreamWorks Animation is knee-deep into its despicable villains. They are unapologetic about Jack Horner because he's a complex character. He's not just evil, he's goal-oriented, ambitious, selfish, power-hungry, sociopathic, and yes, evil. Oh, and he's not afraid to destroy anything in his path that would stop him from attaining his goal. He comes so close to attaining his goal near the end of the movie that if it weren't for his hubris, Puss in Boots would be in serious trouble. Meanwhile, Encanto has no villain. Some say it's Bruno, others say it's Abuela Alma, and some theorists speculate that it's Dolores. And this uncertainty in who the villain is proves that Disney is afraid of how the audience might react to their villains, so they show us watered down, fragile, and dull villains. And to think Disney used to be the master of evil villains. Just think about Gaston from the Disney Renaissance era. He challenged the traditional romance tropes in Beauty and the Beast. He's a local hero and a skilled hunter. He's strong, muscular, good-looking, and every woman in town wants to be with him. And based on that song, I'd say even some of the men want to be with him, if not like him. But interestingly enough, Gaston doesn't want any of these women. He only has eyes for Belle, who couldn't care less for him. Gaston sees Belle as a trophy wife, dismisses her love for books, and wants to be adored and idolized by his wife. This makes him a giant douchebag, and we instantly understand why Belle doesn't want to be with him. The more Belle refuses Gaston, the more he sees her as a wild animal to be hunted down and captured. Meanwhile, Belle starts falling in love with the Beast in a nearby castle. Jealous, thanks to his fragile ego, Gaston hatches a plan, and even though he's not the sharpest tool in the box, he uses his influence over the townspeople and convinces them to hunt the Beast down, so Belle would have no option but to be with him. However, because of that fragile ego, Gaston doesn't want to hunt the Beast down. He wants to personally get rid of him. However, the Beast bests him and wounds his pride. Jealous, Gaston acts his revenge, shoving a knife in the Beast's back, but eventually this leads to his downfall. Gaston's life ends as a result of his fragile ego. All of that nuance in a villain is completely missing from one of the newer movies, like Turning Red or Inside Out 2, and these are just a few of the many. It started with Frozen, but now it has grown to the point where it's becoming a trend, and that trend doesn't work for Disney. I know they're doing it to play it safe in the PC culture world, but it's damaging their reputation, their profit, and their cred with audiences. And all they would need to do to reverse this trend is look back in their history books. Look to a time when villains were the driving force of the story by evoking fear, and the hero had no other choice but to clash with them. And that's where the fourth factor for creating fear in an audience plays a vital role. Number 4, antithesis to the hero. This last factor is a culmination of the previous 3. If the hero doesn't have a good backstory, isn't present in the movie, and isn't complex, then the entire animation will fail. Here's why. Tai Lung is the only reason we had a Kung Fu Panda movie in the first place. Without his presence, there would be no need for Master Oogway to choose a successor. No need to have a dragon warrior like Po. Second, Tai Lung's backstory is so compelling that audiences say that he's one of the few villains who was actually right to despise his Kung Fu master. Master Shifu vigorously trained Tai Lung to be the next dragon warrior. Tai Lung's entire life revolved around Kung Fu, and they took everything away from him, and that's where this character's complexity shines. He wasn't evil. He was turned into a villain by the very people who trained him. He was proud, ambitious, smart, and extremely powerful. However, his obsession with external validation eventually led to his downfall. These 3 factors ultimately turn him into a pressing danger that's about to conquer the valley. He pushes Po to become the Dragon Warrior as fast as humanly possible, because if he doesn't, the entire Peace Valley could be destroyed. Right there, real villain, real stakes, real motivation. And Disney had that exact thing once. The first villain that comes close to this is Mulan. Pressed by the threat of Shan Yu in the Hun attack, China mobilizes all able-bodied men. Mulan's father is old and weak, so she secretly replaces him in battle, posing as a common man. Just like Po, Mulan knew she wasn't strong enough to face Shang Yu, but she never gave up. She improved her strengths and relied on her fellow warriors to defeat the Huns. The looming threat of the Huns who burn the villages and get rid of unnecessary messengers shows us that the Huns are a real terrifying problem. Their leader, Shan Yu, is ruthless, cunning, and merciless, but he has one problem. He's overconfident and has underestimated his opponents. He almost succeeds in taking the Chinese throne if he hadn't underestimated Mulan. Disney knows how to write evil, scary villains. From a decade of experimental movies, we can safely say that movies like Strange World don't work. They want to have 3-dimensional heroes with interpersonal conflicts, but they can't have them pushed into a typical hero's journey adventure story. If they wanted to show the familial conflicts in the Clade family from Strange World, they shouldn't have sent them on an adventure. The adventure is a distraction from the actual conflict. However, if the Clade family united against a common enemy, it would drive and strengthen their family, as well as the movie's adventure aspect. If done correctly, villains inspire not just the hero and the story, but us as viewers. They carry moral lessons that guide us through life and show us what not to do. And if Disney wants to scare their audiences without alienating them, all they need to do is learn from their past. If they were good enough to turn Disney into a household name, they're good enough to reinstate it.